What if the way we organize our economy determines who thrives and who struggles? In a world where some live in luxury while others barely get by, the debate between capitalism and socialism has never been more relevant. On one side, capitalism promises innovation and individual success. On the other, socialism advocates for fairness and collective well-being. But which system truly offers the best path forward? In this video, we'll explore the origins, strengths, and weaknesses of these two powerful forces that have shaped our world. We'll examine their impacts on societies throughout history and consider how they continue to evolve today. The crucial question we're tackling is this: which system is better at delivering prosperity, fairness, and happiness for all? To understand which economic system might be better suited for our world today, we must first go back to their beginnings, when capitalism and socialism were more than just theories. They were revolutionary ideas born out of pure necessity. Our story begins in the late 18th century, during the dawn of the Industrial Revolution. It was a time of unprecedented change. Factories were springing up, cities were expanding, and technological advancements were transforming the way people lived and worked. But as progress often does, it came with a new set of challenges. The old feudal system, where wealth was concentrated in the hands of the aristocracy and landowners, was giving way to a new order: capitalism. Capitalism emerged in response to industrialization. So at its core, capitalism is about private ownership and profit. Individuals could own property, start a business, and compete in a marketplace that rewards innovation. This system, driven by the invisible hand of the market, promised prosperity for those who succeeded. Thinkers like Adam Smith championed capitalism, arguing that when individuals pursued their self-interest, they contributed to society's wealth. Or as Gordon Gekko would put it,
that greed, for lack of a better word, is good.
In Smith's most famous work, The Wealth of Nations, he argues that free markets guided by competition would lead to the efficient allocation of resources and the creation of wealth. Adam Smith's not-so-famous work is a YouTube channel called Economic Blueprint, which he cites as an important source in Wealth of Nations. Probably. Anyways, if you want to subscribe to a pretty fresh YouTube channel, that would be awesome. It really helps us grow. But capitalism wasn't without its critics. As the factories churned out goods and fortunes were made, the gap between the rich and the poor began to widen. Again. The working conditions in these early factories were often pretty brutal. Long hours, low wages, and dangerous environments were the norm. Workers had little to no rights, and the fruits of their labor seemed to benefit only a small, wealthy elite. And with all of this inequality and exploitation, socialism began to take shape. The 19th century saw the rise of socialist thought, with figures like Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels leading the charge. They argued that capitalism, for all its innovation and productivity, was fundamentally flawed. In their view, the system was built on the exploitation of the working class, or the proletariat, by the owning class, the bourgeoisie, or bourgeois. My French isn't really all that good. And as it turns out, Adam Smith isn't the only one who can write books. In their landmark work, The Communist Manifesto, Marx and Engels laid out their vision for a new society, one where the means of production, such as factories, land, and resources, would be owned collectively by the people. They believed that if workers controlled the production process, wealth would be distributed more fairly, and the injustices of capitalism would be eradicated. In addition to being an economic system, it was also sort of a social justice system, because one of the main goals of the movement was to create a society where everyone had access to the resources they needed to live with dignity. And from this sprung the saying, from each according to his ability, to each according to his needs. But big surprise, socialism's promise of equality came with its own set of challenges. So how could a system that was focused on collective ownership and collective planning maintain the same level of innovation and economic dynamism that capitalism did? And these questions would drive the debates that followed. As these ideas took root, the 20th century saw capitalism and socialism move from theory into practice, shaping the destinies of nations, economies, and countless lives. But how did these systems fare when they met the complexity of the real world? No economic system survives contact with the market, I guess. Capitalism found fertile ground in countries like the United States, where the focus on free markets, private ownership, and competition led to unprecedented economic growth and technological innovation, which leads us to, the American dream. A promise that hard work would lead to success. And it quickly became a symbol of capitalism's potential. but this dream wasn't necessarily accessible to all. The prosperity that was generated by capitalism was pretty unevenly distributed, leading to significant inequalities and periodic economic crises like the Great Depression of the 1930s. In response to crises like these, countries would introduce reforms to temper market excesses, so programs like Social Security that protects the vulnerable, creating a mixed economy that blends capitalist dynamism with a socialist safety net. Meanwhile, socialism took a very different path. The Russian Revolution of 1917 marked the first major attempt to implement socialism on a national scale. And the Soviet Union under Comrade Lenin and later Comrade Stalin sought to create a classless society where the state controlled all of major industries and wealth was distributed according to need rather than profit. But in reality, Soviet socialism was far more complex and often pretty harsh. Centralized planning led to inefficiencies, shortages, and corruption. A pretty good example of this is that while the US were having their Great Depression in the 1930s, the Soviet Union had what was called the Holodomor. According to scholars, this was a man-made famine that saw the death of 3.5 to 5 million Ukrainians.
Пухлих у полі по житах, а скільки лежало по дорозі мертвих.
And you could argue there are multiple reasons for this happening, such as bad planning, inefficiency, or even the fact that Joseph Stalin was crazy, but there's no denying that the dreams of a worker's paradise could turn into a nightmare for many, and millions of people suffered under authoritarian rule. But it's not all bad, because socialism wasn't confined to the Soviet Union. So in post-World War II Western Europe, countries like the UK and Sweden adopted socialist principles to rebuild and create equitable societies. These nations introduced welfare states and universal healthcare, combining socialism and democracy in a balanced approach. But as we look at the real-world applications of both of these systems, it becomes clear that neither capitalism nor socialism exists in a pure form. Most nations operate within a spectrum, blending elements of both to varying degrees. The best example here is probably China, because China has combined state control over key sectors and private enterprise with foreign investment, and that helps them to drive rapid economic growth while also maintaining pretty strict political control. So most successful societies often borrow from both capitalism and socialism to meet their needs. Okay, so now that we've laid some of the historical and practical foundations, we need to ask ourselves, how do capitalism and socialism compare head-to-head in key areas that impact our lives today? Let's take a look at a direct comparison to see which system offers the most promise for the future. Innovation and economic growth. Capitalism is praised for driving innovation and growth. Competition for profit creates an environment where new ideas flourish, leading to significant breakthroughs from the industrial age to the digital revolution and even the AI revolution that we're living through now. Socialism focuses on collective well-being, aiming to ensure that innovation's benefits are shared more equally. Critics argue that without profit motives, innovation stagnates, but social democracies show that public investment can support sustainable innovation. Social welfare and wealth distribution. Socialism's commitment to equality and social welfare is one of its strongest appeals, promising a society where everyone has access to essential services regardless of income, reducing the gap between rich and poor. Capitalism, on the other hand, focuses on wealth creation, which can lead to growth but also to inequalities. However, proponents argue that the wealth generated can fund social programs, delivering both prosperity and welfare if managed correctly. Individual freedom versus collective responsibility. Capitalism emphasizes individual freedom. Just look at the United States. The freedom to own property, start a business, and shape your own destiny. This aligns pretty well with the idea that success or failure should depend on effort. Socialism emphasizes collective responsibility, ensuring that everyone's needs are met, which often requires state intervention. And critics argue that this can limit freedom, but supporters believe that true freedom includes security from falling through societal cracks. Debunking misconceptions. When discussing these two systems, it's pretty important to address some of the common misconceptions that often cloud the debate. And one pervasive myth is that socialism is synonymous with authoritarianism. The confusion stems from historical examples where socialist policies were implemented alongside oppressive regimes. However, many modern socialist systems operate within democratic frameworks, balancing state intervention with individual rights. The confusion is understandable though, because socialism does have some pretty nasty examples of things going pretty badly, but capitalism isn't without its faults either. Capitalism is often criticized as inherently exploitative or unsustainable, While unchecked capitalism can lead to significant inequalities and environmental degradation, it's also a system that can be reformed and regulated to address these issues. Many capitalist countries have implemented policies to protect workers, consumers, and the environment, showing that capitalism isn't a monolithic system, but it's one that can adapt to societal needs. If you want an interesting example of unchecked capitalism gone wrong, you needn't look any further than the Hershey Company. And yes, it's that Hershey Company. Milton Hershey, the founder, established the town of Hershey. Yes, he made a town. And that town even had its own currency. And the whole point was that people would work at the factory and they would spend their money there so that he didn't have to pay them real US dollars. And let's just say, Hershey isn't the only example of a company town in the US. So yeah, not exactly flawless. Stepping away from the extreme examples, what does all of this mean for the ongoing debate between capitalism and socialism? Rather than asking which system is better in absolute terms, we should be considering how the strength of each can be integrated to create a society that promotes both economic dynamism and social equity. And the reality is that many successful countries today blend elements of both systems anyways, creating a hybrid model that leverages the benefit of capitalism while ensuring a robust safety net for all citizens. And ultimately, the debate isn't just academic, it's about what kind of world do we want to live in. Whether we prioritize innovation, equality, freedom, or security, the choices we make about our economic systems will shape the future of our societies. The question isn't capitalism or socialism, but how we can create a system that best serves the needs and values of our time. As we move further into the 21st century, the debate between capitalism and socialism has also evolved. Both systems have been forced to adapt to new challenges, such as globalization, technological advancement, climate change, and even shifting social values. Let's take a look at how these ideologies have been reinterpreted and modified in the modern world, and what that means for the future of our economies and societies. The rise of hybrid economies. One of the most significant developments in the modern era is the emergence of hybrid economies, systems that blend both elements of capitalism and socialism to create a more balanced approach. Countries like Sweden, Germany, and even China have adopted models that combine free market principles with robust social welfare programs. These hybrid systems aim to harness the economic dynamism of capitalism while ensuring that the wealth generated benefits a broader segment of society. The technological revolution and its impact. The technological revolution is another force reshaping the landscape of capitalism and socialism. Advances in automation, artificial intelligence, and digital platforms are transforming industries, creating new opportunities but also displacing traditional jobs. In capitalist economies, this has led to concerns about increasing inequality and the concentration of wealth in the hands of a few tech giants. The gig economy, characterized by flexible but often insecure work, is a direct result of this technological shift, raising questions about the future of work and the role of the state in protecting workers' rights. In response to this, some governments and thinkers are revisiting socialist ideas in the context of a digital economy. Concepts like universal basic income, or UBI, a guaranteed income provided to all citizens regardless of employment status, are gaining traction as a potential solution to the challenges posed by automation. UBI represents a significant shift towards the socialist principle of ensuring basic economic security for all, while still operating within a largely capitalist framework. Climate change and economic systems. Climate change is another pressing issue that challenges both capitalist and socialist models. Capitalism, with its focus on growth and consumption, has been criticized for contributing to environmental degradation.
Plastic pollution.
Plastic waste.
Humans produce about 500 million tons of plastic waste every year.
The relentless pursuit of profit has often come at the cost of the planet's health, leading to calls for more sustainable practices and regulations. However, the same market-driven forces in capitalism are also driving innovation in green technology. As companies recognize the economic opportunities within renewable energy, electric vehicles, and sustainable agriculture. Socialism, on the other hand, emphasizing collective responsibility and sometimes state planning, theoretically offers a framework for addressing climate change a bit more directly. By prioritizing long-term environmental goals over short-term profits, socialist policies could drive more aggressive action on climate issues. But the challenge lies in implementing these policies without stifling economic growth or innovation. And the question remains whether a planned economy can respond quickly and effectively to the rapidly changing demands of a global climate crisis.
China's National Observatory has warned of more torrential rain in southern China.
Globalization and its discontents. Globalization has also played a critical role in reshaping both capitalism and socialism. The global flow of goods, services, and capital has created unprecedented opportunities for wealth creation, but it has also led to significant disruptions. In capitalist economies, globalization has driven down costs and expanded markets, but it has also resulted in the offshoring of jobs and increased economic inequality. The backlash against globalization has fueled populist movements and renewed debates about the balance between national interests and global cooperation. On the other hand, socialist-oriented policies have struggled to keep pace with the demands of a globalized economy. The need for international competitiveness has sometimes forced governments to adopt more market-oriented reforms, even in traditionally socialist countries. The challenge for socialism in a globalized world is finding ways to maintain social protections and equality without isolating itself from the global economy or sacrificing economic growth. Looking ahead, the evolution of economic systems. As we look to the future, it's clear that neither capitalism nor socialism will remain static. Both systems will continue to evolve in response to the challenges and opportunities of the modern world. The future likely lies in more adaptive and flexible economic models that can integrate the best aspects of both ideologies. We may see the rise of more mixed economies, where the private sector drives innovation and growth, but with stronger regulations and social protections to ensure that these benefits are widely shared. We might even witness new economic models emerging, ones that we haven't fully conceived of yet, that could redefine the relationship between the state, the market, and society. Ultimately, the ongoing evolution of capitalism and socialism will depend on our collective choices. How we respond to the challenges of technological change, climate crisis, and globalization will determine the future of these ideologies. What's certain is that the debate is far from over. As the world changes, so too must our economic systems, adapting to new realities while striving to create a fairer, more sustainable, and more prosperous world for all. If you want to watch a video about a guy trying to make his country more prosperous, take a look at this video about how Javier Milei is transforming Argentina.